Hey, good morning, Justice Warriors. I am making my video here at about 8:30 on Friday, December 9th. So I want to get into it right away because, as you know, if you saw my videos the last couple of days, I got to finish up my letter of intent. I'm pretty much done with it, but just need to dot the I's and cross the T's. Then I have one more thing and then I'm done. So the deadline is the 15th, a week from yesterday. And this is my third time doing it. So like I do it once, I set it aside. I do it a second time, I set it aside. I do it a third time without looking at the first or second time. And then I'll very likely go back and check with the first and second time to make sure I didn't miss anything. But you know, it is really important to never go with a first offer. I don't know if people that haven't been through legal issues don't know that, but it's the same thing with your rough draft. You want to, third time's a charm. That's where that saying comes from. So you never accept a first offer, never turn in your rough draft. Although I won't deny that I've done it, okay? If it's important to you, you want to do it 3 times. So a lot of times it's good to at least get it done twice. Anyway, I have a lot to cover today and I want to get it done quickly so I can get the show on the road with that application. I'm so excited to be done, and I'm not done yet. I'm so excited to almost be done. Anyway, I wanted to give you a brief outline because there's so much to cover right now and then get into it. So, this case, and let me just say right here, everything I say is my opinion only, strictly for the sake of conversation, opening up a discussion. I'm hoping that it's educational for myself, for anybody else, and it is it's made specifically for YouTube. So that's an entertainment, that's like social media entertainment, I guess technically is what you would call it. But as we all know, this tragic, heinous reality is not the least bit entertaining, not the least bit. So I want to talk about this situation in Moscow, Idaho, being the Greek tragedy to end all Greek tragedies. So, I want to talk about the police chief. I want to talk about getting credit, giving credit, not doing this for the hype, but it's nice to get recognition where recognition is due. I always try to give my people recognition. Um, I want to talk about how when a killer is trying to distract and confuse, a very good tactic for doing that is to try to set up a scenario where your victim was outside, even if they weren't. Okay, we'll get back into that. If they're outside, that opens up a world of possibilities, right? A world of potential suspects, literally. So it's a problem when it's known that the last time the person was alive was inside the house or inside a house type of thing. Um, so I'm going to share with you my theory, and I really do, believe it or not, I really do try to hold off on coming up with a theory until there's plenty of information to substantiate a theory, right? I mean, that's just being responsible. And I also want to address real quick, social media, looking at any potential suspects can be a decent thing because you don't want to have tunnel vision. However, social media is not law enforcement. So my argument against that, like I was speaking to it yesterday, is to allow law enforcement to do their job. And that is to rule out any potential suspect so that they can prove that they didn't have tunnel vision, that they were considering and looking at the situation from all angles. That's extremely important. Um, People acting suspect, is not the same as people being suspect. And think for a minute, like to be inside the mind of a killer, you're not going to give yourself away. You know, just the whole like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. You're going to put up a good front. Ted Bundy is a perfect example. I actually am a dear friend of mine was really close with him. I wouldn't say friends, but she was in a study group with him in law school in Pullman, which is right by Moscow. So, for those that don't know the geography, Moscow, Idaho is, I think, 20 minutes from Pullman, Washington, where uh, Washington State University is. Sorry, had a brain fart there. WSU. Anyway, so that's where they went to law school. I think I'd have to double check that. Don't strike me if I'm inaccurate. It could be that they went to Western Washington for law school and um, Wazoo for pre-law. Anyway, I used to live out there, so I knew all these things. But I went to college at the Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington, after I transferred from Miami University here in Ohio. And Evergreen State College is where Ted Bundy attacked his first uh, fatal victim that we know of. So it was a situation where he pretended to have a broken arm. He had a fake cast on his arm, and he was pretending to be taking books out of the library with his crutches and asked a unsuspecting young woman to help him out to his car. We all know the rest, right? Um, yeah. Pacific Northwest is kind of rampant with serial killers, right? Anyway, back to Moscow. Um, this really is the Greek tragedy to end all Greek tragedies. The whole purpose of a Greek tragedy is to impress upon the audience the extreme heartache of life through graphic blood, guts, and gore that is not supposed to be anything like the physical reality of a situation, right? So, my theory with these four victims, I have a couple of theories that I've been slowly formulating, watching the news, watching other content creators, and trying to keep the brakes on. But it just kind of came to me today. All right, so I'm going to share it. I'm not saying I'm right. Absolutely not saying I'm right. Um, my theory is that the killer had planned this for a while, and that it was a he and it was a one, and that he planned on murder suicide, that it was a heartbreak and it was like a Romeo Juliet kind of die together idea, possibly. And when he was executing his plan, things didn't go as planned, as they pretty much never do, right? And he probably wasn't expecting to find two people in a bed together. So that is where that started. He got caught up in the moment. He was really struggling to end it for himself because most narcissists will not kill themselves, despite what they might tell you in order to try to manipulate you. They will not, ever. Think of O.J. Simpson and his suicide note in the white Ford Bronco, the slow chase on the freeway, and his suicide note with the smiley face on it. Narcissists don't kill themselves. They just don't. You know, they're the king of the world. So my guess is that this young man thought he could kill himself, not realizing that he's a complete and utter narcissist. And then Ethan got out of bed, whether he had made noise and Ethan heard him, or whether Ethan just had to go to the bathroom or get some water or something. And then the rest is history. And it looks like, to me, that the killer fled on foot, possibly out the front door, right? We know now. I just found out yesterday, I don't know about you guys, that the front door was left wide open when 911 first responders got there in the morning. So, another key factor for me is Murphy, the dog, was, I believe, put into Kaylee's old room with the door shut, and Murphy stayed in there for 9 hours or however long from the time that these murders occurred, roughly 3 a.m. to 4 a.m., until sometime after 12 when he was discovered, probably around there. So, this is my theory, all right? Let me just jump into my next line here because I don't think that white car has anything to do with the quadruple homicide. I'm not saying that that white car doesn't need to be tracked down. It does need to be tracked down. And I think what I'm hearing more is that law enforcement just wants to talk to the people in the white car, thinking that they probably saw something. And that's great. As soon as I heard about that 3:01 a.m. drunken disorderly call, half a block away or a block away, my first thought was fantastic. The police should have body cam and dash cam or both, and they might have all kinds of information on there that isn't directly related, may be directly related, but more likely indirectly related. But every little thing helps. Every little thing helps. You never know what piece of information is going to make the whole story fall apart. I like to think of the Weezer Undone Sweater song. You just grab that one little string, and sure enough, the entire sweater will come undone. So that's what police are looking for. So, the police chief, oh my God, I am disgusted. I'm absolutely disgusted. Okay, he seems like a nice guy. He seems intelligent enough, but not wise. Yesterday, he was seen on news footage driving the U-Haul with the deceased people's articles in it, their personal possessions that he was giving back to the family. Now, you guys know I really don't like to criticize. I really don't like to criticize law enforcement, especially when their heart is in the right place. But I'm not buying it that this guy's heart is in the right place. He looks like his heart is in the right place. Like, oh, I just want to make these families happy. They're suffering. But you know what would make them happy? We all know what would make them happy. They know what would make them happy. And he sure as F knows what would make them happy, right? An arrest warrant, an affidavit, an arrest affidavit, taking a killer into custody, apprehending a homicidal maniac. People are not looking at the fact that we have a mad killer out there, that if he's done this, what is going to stop him from doing anything else? Especially, he's thinking that he'll get caught, most likely, because that's just the way these things go, and doesn't want to spend the rest of his life in jail. More than that, doesn't want to deal with the rejection that he will get from virtually the entire world once they find out that he did something so unthinkable, so disgusting. That anybody could be capable of that is unreal. It's absolutely unreal. So, this police chief driving the U-Haul and getting these people their possessions, okay? No, no, that should be done after a person is taken into custody. Your primary suspect is taken into custody, in my humble opinion. Now, I've been waiting to say some of these things because it is Friday, like I said, December 9th, and I'll just be honest with you. I had an inkling that by today there would be an arrest. I really did. I really thought that. I thought the law enforcement was just laying low and then they were going to strike. Who knows? It ain't looking that way. It is not looking that way. And another possibility that is extremely unlikely, but a possibility, is that this killer will turn himself in. That he's running scared, he can't eat, he can't sleep. He's, not even half asleep with one eye open. He's watching over his back. He's paranoid. He's reliving those moments of seeing the whites of people's eyes as he's instilling the fear to end the world into their souls. And yeah, he probably got off on that, but it also probably confused him. The terror, right? I mean, it's just such a power trip. It's so disgusting. So, one of the things that's really pissed me off with law enforcement is when they've gone back and forth with who was targeted. Okay, that's fine to go back and forth with who was targeted. But what got me was when they said, oh, wait a second, we don't even know if anybody was targeted. We think the house might have been targeted. Can I just inject a little humor here because I feel like I need it? Ugh. You guys remember that awesome Steve Martin movie, The Jerk? And when this rando serial killer is shooting at Steve Martin and he's a gas station attendant, and this guy had literally found him in the phone book and is being a sniper across the way shooting at him. And Steve Martin's character realizes that things are getting shot by him as he's pumping somebody's gas. So he's running and hiding and ducking for cover. And then he starts to think that the killer hates the cans because he's hiding behind the Pepsi machine and the killer shoots up the Pepsi machine. Then he hides behind the pyramid of the oil cans and the killer shoots all the oil cans. And it's a really cute moment when Steve Martin, I love that man, when he says, oh my God, he hates the cans! It's the cans! He hates the cans! And I'm telling you, when these law enforcement officials said that it might have been the house that was targeted, that was my very first thought. I was just like, this guy does not hate the house. This guy was not going after the freaking house, brutalizing, slaughtering four beautiful, young, promising individuals, successful with their whole lives ahead. No, he did not hate the house. He hated them. He hated them. And he hates himself. He totally hates himself. So I'm very concerned that he can brine laundry himself. And I've said that a couple of times. Very concerned about that. He needs to be arrested. And I say he, one person, because, you got to think about it. Yeah, it seems impossible that one person could off four people. But if you were making a plan to do something like that, who would you trust to be your cohort? Who would you trust to be your partner in crime? Who could you trust to be your partner in crime? It's too many wild cards to have another person. I'm of the opinion that it's one individual. So let me get through the rest of my list here so I can wrap this up. I love you guys. Oh, and please hit the thumbs up, share, and subscribe if you haven't yet. I really do love you guys. I just got to get my video out there so that I can get my other thing done. And so I'm all motivated. I'm all kinds of motivated. And when I'm on a roll, I'm on a roll. So, not to toot my own horn, but let me just jump into this part too. I would like a little bit of credit because I came up with that thing about the dash cam and body cam footage possibilities the second I heard about the 3:01 a.m. call. Okay? I know some things. I have lived my whole life front center up close in situations like this. So I know some things. And that was my knee-jerk reaction was, "Oh my, they are going to have footage that's going to be helpful, whether they know it or not." Unless, of course, they don't have body cams or don't have dash cams, which is a possibility even in this day and age. There are police departments that are that much from the Stone Ages, and that is not acceptable. It is the standard practice, best practice, policy procedure to have surveillance footage for law enforcement, for everything, for everywhere, right? Anyway, to give myself a little pat on the back too, I'm pretty sure I was the first person that thought of this whole water rights issue in the Kylie Rodney case, with Kylie Rodney's granddad, David Robertson, owning a public utility water company for 30 years. I'm pretty sure I was the first one to hit that information and put it on the airwaves. And when I did, I honestly thought it was kind of just not really that related, okay? And the first movie I threw out there to um, compare it to was Rango, the cartoon with Johnny Depp. And then the last movie that I was to compare it to, because it's pretty much the exact same script, is Chinatown. So for those of us that are still looking for justice for Kylie Rodney, look no further than the 1970 movie Chinatown. I'm going to guess exactly what happened. The exact same thing. Different people in the same roles. Okay? But back to Idaho. So, yeah, I like to get credit, but that's not my my motivating factor. My motivating factor is truth and justice. And I would honestly rather not get credit if it was one or the other. Of course, I would rather see truth come out and justice be had and be a wallflower and go unnoticed. I actually enjoy being a wallflower and going unnoticed. So, but again, it is also nice to get credit and give credit. So I always try to give credit. And I know that I've had to have forgotten at times. So I have no problem with anybody asking me or telling me if they think I got something from somewhere else and I'm not giving credit. Um, Once we put something out on the airwaves of the YouTube social media, it's pretty much public information, right? I mean, it's out there and we're all sharing, and that's where the whole um, crowdsourcing comes in. So just so we're clear on that. But yeah, you don't want to plagiarize people, and even if it's not a legal issue, it's just an ethical issue. It's just a nice thing to allow people the credit that they're due when they're the ones doing the digging and the research. Um, all of this information is available on the internet. I mean, most of us are getting almost all, if not all, of our information from Google. So I guess we should just credit Google. But then of course there's people that have information from other sources, um, whether they live on location or they have visited location or they know people or whatever. Back to the story. Here we go. Um, Maybe, just maybe, the person who committed these crimes was pretty sure that he actually could get away with it because he's lived in Moscow for 5 years and he knows that there's a bunch of Keystone cops. Now, I don't know all of the facts. I haven't looked real close at that police department, but of course it's not that big. I think the town is like 25,000 people. And I did hear on probably News Nation that the longest, well, it's been 7 years since their last murder, and what I heard was their youngest police officer in the department right now is 26 years old. So he was only 19 at the time that the last murder happened, but also you cannot become a police officer until you're 21. You can go through the academy and complete that, I think, before your 21st birthday, but you cannot be a commissioned police officer until after your 21st birthday. That's for sure. So, um, anyway, just thinking that perhaps this killer thought, "Hey, I can do this. I can get away with it." But I really believe that he was intending on killing himself. But I guess I'm kind of 50-50, honestly. So, let's see. The police chief driving the U-Haul truck. I think it was a U-Haul. I didn't get a good look at it. That's not just him being a nice guy and trying to be like down to earth, like, oh, I'm just a regular guy, I'm trying to help. That's what you call the photo op. And that is him being a freaking ego maniac, wanting the attention, wanting to look like he's being a nice guy because he's a freaking buffoon and he can't do his job. He doesn't have time to be driving trucks. He needs to get an arrest affidavit signed, sealed, and delivered, signed by a judge, delivered to the perp. Come on. That just makes me sick. That absolutely makes me sick. So I'm going to skip over a couple of things and save them for the next one. Oh, my goodness. Dearie me, my. It's okay for us to be wrong. It's okay for you to be wrong about your theory. It's okay for me to be wrong about my theory. I want to give huge shout outs to a couple of big time content creators that have been doing this for a few years, and I think they're phenomenal. Grizzly True Crime, I've watched her grow from the very beginning. And True Crime Rocket Science, I haven't watched him grow since his inception, but I've watched him grow. And they both do incredible work and put together incredible presentations, as does Zav Girl. You know, I'm a huge fan of hers too. And none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect. But people need to understand that these content creators are offering the public a presentation, an idea of what's going on in their heads. And you don't need to like it and you don't need to agree, but you don't need to jump on these people and tear them up and rip them a new one, in my humble opinion. I just want to say that. So, um, let me get into that issue of getting your victim outside or getting the public or law enforcement to think that your victim was outside. Go back to the Lacey Peterson homicide with her disgusting, uh, horrible, horrible husband, Scott Peterson. He tried to say she was out walking the dog, right? Isn't that perfect? Because who knows what could have happened? She could have slipped and fallen and overreacted and died, the way so often happens, since she was pregnant. She could have been abducted by a satanic cult because she was pregnant and they wanted, people, perps just run with that. They absolutely run with that. They always go to the satanic cult thing. And it is satanic. It's absolutely satanic what Scott Peterson did to Lacey, what Barry Morphew may have done to Suzanne Morphew, what Chris Watts says he did to his family, what Brian Laundrie did to Gabby Petito, what happened to Trinity Backus, what happened to Kylie Rodney. It is absolutely satanic, in my humble opinion. Whether there's any kind of actual satanic cult, ritual, sacrifice involved in any of this doesn't need to be literal. It's a crime either way. Those types of sacrifices and rituals are criminal activity. It's not legal. That's why they keep it secret. It's disgusting. And sometimes you've got law enforcement that is involved in satanic cult activity. I would think that that is the craziest thing that's ever come out of my mouth, except for the fact that Olympia, Washington Police Department was being sued by the police chief's daughter, who was 26 years old, and he had lost his daughter in a poker match. He was part of a satanic cult. He lost his daughter in a poker match when she was 6 years old. Somehow she didn't die, but at some point when she was a young adult, she got away from the people that he sacrificed her to, basically. And she landed in Western State Psychiatric Facility. It's where you live when you're completely nuts. And while she was living there being completely nuts, she successfully sued the Olympia Police Department. This was in 1987, okay? My friend was one of the attorney generals that was suing that was representing her. You can't make this stuff up, people. You cannot make this stuff up. So, the problem with these four people in the Moscow, Idaho crime is that they were all inside the house, and there's no way that there's any possibility of pretending that they could have been victimized by any rando. And I'm going to tell you why. It was dark. It was 3 a.m. You know, people have talked about maybe a light getting flicked on and off. How in the world are you going to get in there, get the dog put away safely, and the dog's not barking at you and not jumping up and down all excited and licking you and all this because you know how to calm your dog down and you know your way around these rooms, because there's no way somebody who didn't know this house like the back of their hand could go in there and do what they did and get out of there, in my humble opinion. People would talk with the Kylie Rodney case about how dark it was out there at Prosser Lake. Like, she had to have driven into the lake because it was so dark she couldn't see. That really agitated me when people would talk like that. It's like, yeah, it's dark. We know that. Come on. That has nothing to do with anything. But look at this situation. It's dark. This person that did this in the dark. How on earth could you do that in the dark if you did not know this house, the layout, these people, the setup? How on earth could you do that? Something to think about. All right. All right. So I think this is pretty much it. Oh, no, not it. Let's see. Corruption. Need to talk about that. Always, always. Um, so that's going to be my final thing, and then I will wrap it up. I'm probably at half an hour. Yep, 32 minutes. All right. So the corruption in the police department. Again, I do not like to criticize. I would like to say good job, genius detectives. Excellent work. Because yeah, it's not an easy job. It's absolutely not an easy job. And anybody can be critical. Everyone's a critic, right? Everyone's an armchair detective, armchair quarterback. Hindsight's always 2020. But what really upsets me in law enforcement, like this police chief driving this U-Haul, that is not in his job description. His pay grade is way too high for him to be doing the heavy lifting. Am I right? Way too high to be doing the heavy lifting. He could have had anybody in his department do that. He could have had any Moscow City employee do that. But no, he wanted to be the one, the photo op, the Mr. Nice Guy. I don't trust that man at all after seeing him drive that flippin' truck. And you guys can think what you want to think and you can criticize me for that. But no, the man's a buffoon. The man is an egomaniac. He was just lapping up that attention and just wanting to say, look at me, I'm so nice, I'm helping. No, do your job. I mean, yeah, if you've already got this guy arrested, then sure, go in there and help and drive the truck if you're all done with your work. If you're all done with your work, okay? Give me a break. Anyway, the unbelievable stupidity, the incompetence can be covered up with corruption. The corruption can be covered under the guise of incompetence. I never thought of that until an hour ago. Does that make sense? It makes sense to me. I've known for a long time that corruption is often covered by incompetence. Like they just pull the buffoon card and go, oh, well, I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to tie my shoes. So, you know, I couldn't do my job since I didn't even know how to tie my shoes. and they will act dumb rather than being held accountable, of course, if that's all the only other option they have. So you can hide your corruption with incompetence, but you can also hide your incompetence with corruption. And I knew that. I just hadn't put it into those words. I mean, it's like a freaking riddle, isn't it? Ugh. But why? Why don't people who take these jobs, who get this training, just do the work, do their job, be satisfied with that, take the paycheck, and stay humble and keep at it? I know it's a hard job. I know that. But there's a lot of people who would love to do those jobs. And if they got through a police academy, they could do those jobs. But the problem is, a lot of folks in positions like that try to pretend that they're special and nobody else can get there. And so people think that they can't get into a job like that because they don't have the connections, they don't have the training. All you got to do is go through a police academy. They're usually 6 months long, I think, maybe 9 months. Most police academies across the country, each state has their own. Many states require you to go through their state academy. So even if you're a commissioned officer of 30 years, 20 years from another state, you still need to go through that state's academy. Not always, but you know, that's good. You're just going to get more information. So there are so many amazing officers of the law. And my hope is that we've got some of those amazing officials on this case to find justice for the Idaho Four and their families. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to say thank you. Thank you kindly for watching. Please, again, don't forget to hit that like button, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And take care of yourself to the best of your ability. Get your hydration, get your nutrition, get your exercise. Be good to yourself, be good to other people, and have a great weekend. And I will see you on the next one. Thanks again.